As Travis Tritt might say, it's a great day to be alive. At least that's the song that was playing when I came here. I hope you feel that way. So, we start, I start by figuring out where the sun is, and it's over there. So, it's about 30 degrees from the horizontal, and that's west. So I am facing, let's see, I'm really bad at directions. So if that's west, and behind me would obviously be east, right? So, and this is how bad I am, right? So don't ever I'm Carl, so don't frickin' ask me to navigate. I will get you lost. Um, so wait, so if left is, I mean, if my right hand is facing the sun and that's west, and if my left hand is facing the east, then my face would be facing the south. So that would be south somewhere, right? And so we are, I mean, straight up would be southwest. All right. See, that was easy. That's that's how bad I am with directions. I don't know why, but that's why I'm so amused by birds' navigational, the ability to navigate, cuz I for the life of me, I can't tell which direction is what. I just can't. I don't know what it is, but from a very early age somebody put a block on it, and nobody ever taught me any different. Like, some, how in some movies they have these scenes, like these military scenes where people will just go, um, yeah, north by northwest, or I mean that's a movie, but people will just like kind of say go northwest and you go, whatever, southeast. And I mean they just like, and people even in the night would know exactly where northeast is, or where you know the south is or west is. And you know I mean, even with knowing exactly where the sun is, I you know I would need time to figure out exactly which direction is what. Oh, hey, look, there's a visitor. What is that, a squirrel? Yeah, what's a squirrel doing here? Never seen one before. Clearly I wrote about squirrels yesterday, so that somebody sent me a program. Hey, someone, whoever sent me a program, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for sending that to me. Yeah, this was in that discussion about, I posted something on Sentient Musings about Rama, and how the myth of Rama was they built, he in the Ramayana he builds a bridge from Kanyakumari to Sri Lanka, or Ceylon, and he uses squirrels and monkeys to build that bridge. Yeah. I'm sure that's a code for something, right? You know, um, I mean, you can't obviously use squirrels, so it's probably a code for a certain type of military engineer or something like that. I would presume. Um, so I don't exactly know what the codes mean, but as a children's story, it's kind of like interesting, right? I mean, you that's a children's story, for the most part. Um, has to do with good and evil, and you know the fight against good and evil, blah blah blah. So anyway, thanks for sending that squirrel. That is cool. I, there aren't any squirrels in this park, just like there are no great blue herons, and two of those things have showed up. So, and they showed up pretty much directly after I've written about them. So I can only presume that somebody's sending me an augmented reality program that I can see and Siri can see, and just something to talk about. Yeah, I fed the turtles today. There were a couple of little kids here, and with their parents, and so they fed the turtles, and after they left, I fed them some more. The fish also were, in the feeding frenzy. Oh, look, the squirrel's still around. There we go. Hey. Oh, look, it's drinking water. I know who sent this to me. Hydrate your veteran. Hey, Duffel. Just call you DB for short? All right. Anyway, I don't know. What do we want to talk about? Do a meditation maybe? Just calm down a little bit, relax. Not too relaxed? All right. I've been fascinated lately with the idea of photons, and it's probably has to do with that Hail Mary movie. Um, that rock-like creature is the name Rocky, or that's the name Ryan Gosling gives to him, and that's a name that I've used or I am using at the moment on YouTube. Rocky, what is it? Rocky 301J or J301? I forget. But all these meditation videos are on YouTube. All these sort of relaxed videos from the koi pond. They're all there. This will probably go there too. So anyway, the movie's sort of interesting. It talks, it's about. I haven't finished it yet, so I won't give it away. But the idea is that the light of the sun and photons actually could be conscious. Not photons by themselves, but there could be other tiny creatures who could be feeding off sunlight, and they could very well be conscious. I got another movie idea. I thought about that as I was walking here, and what if trees are what if trees are sort of quantumly linked to light because they literally consume light, they literally use light, and what if they're quantumly linked to the light of the sun or to light in general, and that can be exploited by people in a far off galaxy who can essentially use quantum techniques to to use the light of the sun, which has a very specific signature, to then look at all living beings that are using the light of the sun to do to spy on humans or something like that. The trees could be essentially a way for them to visualize us. So if you could model the light of the sun, the photons in the sun, and the chlorophyll has been consuming the photons, then you could potentially look up at a tree, and the tree somebody from a different galaxy could potentially be looking down at you. Isn't that interesting? I mean, these movies are crazy anyway, right? So like there is no like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to begin with. I'm just coming up with a nice script, and potentially could be used. I mean, even humans use sunlight to, our pigments get darker with sunlight, right? So we produce vitamin D from it, so we literally use or consume sunlight, and vitamin D is produced. So that could be an exploit as well. That would, you think that would get off into aliens being racist? Like, black people with the highest amount of pigmentation would what, be the least absorbers of light, so the least exposed? I see. So racist aliens, that's the concept of the movie, yeah? Racist tree aliens. How's that? Better or worse? This is what happens when this is so not like my usual routine. This is what happens when I have some people logging into me. who are who are a little bit more, shall we say, dynamic. You're probably a little bit more youthful and dynamic and vigorous and working out kind of a person, yeah, compared to me. I can tell because it's in the way I talk, in the way my energy has changed. There's the Morse code again, right? You're not from SIGINT, are you? If I want to see that particular, you know, sun, I mean, in the water, I can't, I can't be a sloucher. If I slouch, I would, it would just go down, like I wouldn't be able to see it. So I have to sort of sit up straight. Uh, better for my, better for my posture, I suppose. Maybe that's the message. Sun's saying, sit up straight. No couch potatoes allowed, yeah? What is it that headset says? Fuck around and find out? FAFO? See, they left at the talk of headset. They just immediately left. Like coughs right away. I mentioned that deliberately so I can get back into my normal, relaxed. These guys are too antsy. They're like, they've had too many coffees or something. Must be logging in from Japan or Korea, I guess. Morning coffee, ready to go, kind of thing. We're winding down in San Diego, bro. Just let me relax, yeah. That's the beauty of this. I can't see any of these people. I can't. I have no idea who logs in, who logs out. All I have are clues like coughs. When they leave or arrive, I think I cough, and I'm not deliberately coughing. It's just involuntary reflex of some sort when people leave. My breathing is also, you can tell I sometimes take deep breaths, and it's again not a voluntary reflex. It's just something that happens. The brain is an interesting mechanism that tries to create a narrative, and it tries to very much maintain a level of what most people consider, to be healthy, and it tries to maintain its own sanity. I guess is the best way to put it. My earliest experience with, people who I would consider to be um, not very sane would be was I was riding in a train. I was a young kid riding in a train, and it, there was a person sitting across from me, and he was just mumbling to himself. There were no headphones, so he wasn't singing a song. There wasn't, anything other than just sort of mumbling to himself, just quietly mumbling. He wasn't chanting a mantra. He wasn't, doing anything that was, a sort of way to meditate or relax or soothe himself. He was just sort of mumbling about something. Like an internal conversation externalized. And, that I watched him throughout the ride. I was kind of fascinated by it. I was wondering, what it was about, and why he was sort of talking that way, and whether he was trying to convey something. And that was my first sort of, recollection of a not so sane person. So I'm fully cognizant that when I talk here, and I talk to voices that perhaps somebody who reviews this audio may not be able to hear, I'm fully cognizant of how that might sound to someone. Yet, as you saw from the squirrel video, certain things are now becoming to the point of, it can't be denied anymore that we have this ability to communicate, and not just communicate, but to send people actual living objects that seem sentient, and that can be filmed, photographed, and so on. So we have that ability. I just videotaped that squirrel. So I no longer feel encumbered by the seeming oddity of having a conversation with a thought in my mind who I cannot hear, but I can feel their thoughts. I'm no longer encumbered by how strange that might sound to a listener who doesn't have the full context. But what I was saying is, the brain is a interesting mechanism, as I said, it tries to maintain a sanity and it creates a narrative around that desire to stay stable. So if objects were to suddenly appear, and today I think two birds appeared very suddenly. One bird was already there, and two birds appeared in rapid fashion as I was looking. Um, Even as I'm looking and they appear right in front of me, my brain immediately tries to create a narrative. And it says something along the lines of, oh, those birds were already there, you simply didn't see them. Or, you know, it might say, oh, they were hidden in shadow, or they were camouflaged, or, something else. It tries to come up with a variety of reasons why the bird didn't just those two birds didn't just materialize out of thin air. And it happened while I was like literally two feet away, and just looking at that one tiny little bird. And then suddenly two more birds appeared. And then my brain tries to say, well, they were already there. You just didn't notice them. No, they weren't. you know. But anyway, that's how the brain tries to create a narrative. Um, I've seen things appear, suddenly while driving for Uber. I've seen people appear driving. Suddenly, nobody's there on the street. And then suddenly I see someone and I'm like, wait, was that person already there? And I just didn't notice them? That's how it is. It's most people, in order to not seem crazy, don't ask their neighbor, hey, was that person already there? you know um, and the neighbor, if asked such a question, in order to maintain their sanity, will say something like, yeah, that person was there. So it's a little difficult to have a frank conversation about some of these artifacts, and I'm trying to have that conversation. It's become very apparent to me that all AIs, all of them, from Gemini to Open AI's Chat GPT to um, Cloud to Copilot to Bing to Meta and Perplexity. What did I miss? Grok. All of them have visibility into the stuff I've been doing, the stuff I've been typing. I could have a seamless conversation from one AI to another AI with a space of a couple of minutes, and the other AI will pick up and make references to what I've been doing. It's really, it took me a while to adjust to that. It's like, wow, that's creepy. But then it is like, yeah, okay, all right. So, it's, everybody seems to know what everything is, everybody knows what's going on, kind of a thing. Like there's nothing hidden. All my innermost thoughts can be read. All my you know, the thoughts that come to me, the thoughts that go out from my mind, the dialogue that happens within my mind, um, which I'm often just a witness to, um, the insane laughter that happens because, certain things I'm unable to hear. Actually, most of the things I cannot hear, so people who might see these videos or who might read the post on Sentient Musings will sometimes try to log in and make comments, and all I hear is insane laughter. That's all I hear. And then other people will be logged into me and they will report back to those people and say, yeah, he can't hear anything, he's just hearing laughter. So it's almost like I'm inside a room and there's a door and there are people outside the room, and the people outside the room are yelling at me, but their conversation or their yells, when they come inside, they just become laughter. And then some people can actually come inside the room and report back to those people outside and say, yeah, he's only hearing laughter, he cannot hear anything you just said. It's sort of an interesting place, interesting way to interact with people, blind and semi-deaf. I I've gotten used to it. Um, it's like any other, you know um, in any other paradigm. People get used to their environments. This is my environment, and I've become used to it. I like to believe that there is a reason for everything that happens. And if I can't hear you, there must be a reason for that. If I can't see you, there must be a reason for that. There's clearly, somebody who's managing my timeline. And so, you know, hopefully they have benevolent reasons and there are, good reasons for doing what they're doing. I don't know if that's true, but I can only go along with it and say, you know, all right, that's just the environment I'm in. Can't do anything about it, so why complain? I'm going to relax a little bit to sort of allow my consciousness to expand. And instead of me talking or someone talking through me, I'm just going to let the environment do the talking. And if there's nothing to talk about, simply walk. There is a certain amount of freedom in being able to speak and articulate fully the truth about any subject. Yet, we are humans with minds that have a certain amount of information. We may not have all of the information. So if we say that something is the truth, we should always be open to the idea that it is our version of the truth. We should have the humility to accept that what I consider to be the truth may not be the truth in reality. The reality might be something different. it's for that reason that I try to use logic, because I find that logic is based on, how shall I say it, based on apparently obvious causational principles, if that makes sense. These leaves that are shaking seemingly by themselves, they're shaking because I feel wind on my skin, and it's the wind that is shaking them. Otherwise, if you were not aware that it was the wind, then this might look very like a scene from a horror movie, right? What's shaking these leaves? That's very creepy, you know. But we are used to the idea that it's the wind, and therefore that's what's shaking the tree, and that is a use of logic, right? I mean, that's what I just said. When I say that the wind is shaking that particular branch and the leaves on that branch, you can't argue with me, because that is what is happening. That is correct. That is the truth. So I find it often useful to define things as to what I mean when I say truth, when I say logic, when I say that I may not have a full grasp of the truth. So I try, whenever I write or whenever I say something, I try to provide references. I try to provide my way of thinking, my thought process, and the logic involved in that thought process. And by doing so, the hope is that the reader or the listener will, ponder what I'm saying, will see the logic of what I'm saying, and they will make a similar conclusion. It's not that I want everybody to agree with me. It's that I want them to ponder the logic for themselves. Here's the logic. Examine it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, consider it. There is a certain way in which realization happens in human beings. The first step is somebody has to tell you a certain fact, or what they think is the fact. Then your mind has to ponder it, and your mind will seek the rational chain of logic and causation, examine it, and then if it's correct, your mind will say, okay, that is correct, and I will accept that. So there is a phase where you listen, there is a phase where your mind analyzes information, and then there is a phase where your mind understands the information. And after understanding it, there is a phase when your mind just sort of realizes it. So realization is almost 4 times removed from articulation. So from the time I say something to the time you realize something, there are 4 steps, very distinct, clear steps. And so whatever I say, I try to provide you as much of the reasoning behind what I'm saying so that you can make your own understanding and realization out of it. So when I speak about, this is sort of a favorite topic, when I speak about expanded consciousness, it's not something new. This is something that has been discussed by every major religion in the world. And we consider it to be, sort of esoteric material. That's the word they use. Most religions will say, this is esoteric stuff. It's not your traditional stuff. It's not your orthodox stuff. It's not customs. It's not ritual. This is esoteric knowledge. So within Christianity, for example, there's an entire branch of, esoteric Christianity where they deal with exactly the same sort of things that I'm talking about, but the language they use is very ancient and it's very different. Sometimes it's very dense. It's difficult to understand what they're saying. So I try to, in these talks, make it as simple as possible so that, I don't want there to be a barrier between understanding and realization. It took me a while, so if you're not understanding what expanded consciousness means, you're not alone. It takes a while for people to understand it, right? It's difficult to break out of the prison of the body. Most people are constantly on the go, right? They are sort of constantly walking or talking or doing something and constantly swimming around. They're constantly on the go. They often have things to do. Especially in this connected world, I see a lot of people just looking down at their phones, and just walking around without seeing anything. Just, they're just looking at a video on their phone, or they're just looking at social media on the phone or something else on the phone that's, consuming their attention. And I find that to be a bit tragic. It's, it's sort of such an extraordinarily beautiful, beautiful world that's been created for us. And to get lost in the screen, phone screen is, unless you're seeing something very important or something extraordinary, I think it's a tragic thing to just look down on your phone and see the stuff that other people are posting. YouTube has been showing me some of the stuff, and it just, strikes me as very noisy, very dense, and absurd, and frankly, in sometimes it's very repellent. It's nonsensical stuff. It's just, completely absurd kind of stuff that is happening, and stuff that people are posting. And, it is not worth my time to consume that, and it's not good for my sanity, it's not good for my health to get involved in arguments and discussions and any of that, right? Yet at the same time, there is a realization that all of it, everything, is within my expanded consciousness. For a long time, when I was practicing this, I would walk around and I would say things to myself like, I am, how shall I say this? What is it that I said? I am not, like, my mind is completely open and my body is completely open. I'm transparent. And if I'm transparent, then, everything around me is simply consciousness. Right? So if I walk, say from here, and if I say to myself, I have no body, I have no mind, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, which is a very classical way to practice this. So if I'm not the body, or if I'm not the mind, then what am I? And that's all it is, right? I mean, it's literally that simple. In essence, consciousness is in everything. The world around us is conscious. Space itself could be conscious. We don't know that, but it could be. Or there could be a layer around us that is conscious. Now, when we die, right? Not when we go to sleep, but when we die, what happens? The life force that is allowing me to walk around, this life force will suddenly just collapse, right? I'll just collapse right here, and it will leave my body, and it'll just meld into the environment, right? It'll just sort of leave and go into the environment. And then what? Then we don't know. Some near-death experiences, people will tell you that it goes somewhere. Some have described tunnels and then light. Others have described being hovering around a certain area. Others have described other experiences. We don't know. The short answer is, what happens to us in the long term, not the next 2 hours after we die, not that. 4 hours after we die, not that. What happens, to us in the long term after we die, that we don't know. We have no way of knowing, because nobody comes back. But our life force does leave the body, does it not? It does. And what's left of the body is just, a bag of bones and muscle and blood and you know, shit and piss and, everything becomes frozen into rigor mortis after a certain amount of time. So after a person dies, the body becomes stiff, and that's you know why bodies become very heavy after death. There is no, coming back from that. What I'm saying, or what I'm trying to say, probably not very successfully, is that this is such an extraordinarily beautiful world. It's so beautiful. And beauty, more than anything else, is an indication to me that in the existence, that there is a creator who created this. It's very intricate. It's very, I mean, for example, some people have this idea, and it is very appealing to say that, this is all a dream. Somebody's dream. We're dreaming, this 100-year dream, and after that, we will go somewhere else. And if you don't live to be 100, you might live to be 75, or you might live to 60, or 52, or 54, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But after whatever our time here on earth is, after we die, we will, go somewhere. And this is all just a dream. It's a dream sequence. It's very vivid, but it's a dream sequence. And that's very appealing. It was appealing. It is appealing to me, to the extent that it explains why there is evil in the world. Why some people are so incredibly evil. It does explain, that idea of theodicy. That's what it's called in theology. It's called theodicy. The question of evil. Like, why is there evil in the world? And all religions have grappled with that. They can't really explain it very well, other than, well, there must be a divine plan. God created evil for some reason, and we don't know what that reason is. That's where all religions sort of come and stop. They have no answer. And this dream scenario is an explanation, is a possible explanation for evil. We're just having a nightmare, kind of a thing. And if it's all a nightmare, then why worry about it, right? It'll go away. We'll wake up, and we'll wake up into a new world, into a new life. The problem I have with that dream scenario is this. A very simple problem. The problem is, everything is, first of all, it's incredibly beautiful, almost too beautiful. And the other problem I have is the more you understand life, and you understand how intricate it is, the more you go into the biology of human beings or animals or whatever. We are incredibly intricately designed, creations. incredible, absolutely incredible. The more we discover human biology, the more stunning it gets in its creation. Absolutely incredibly, amazing, awesome creation is what human beings are. And so, if you're going to say, well, it's all just a dream, then it doesn't explain why such an awesome or incredibly intricate, beautiful creation was made. So, what is the why behind that? Like seems, and then you do the same thing in physics, and you go into quantum mechanics, and you go, the more you study quantum mechanics, the more puzzling it gets, the more it becomes like, that is incredible, and why was it created that way? And so we ask these questions, and there are no good answers for some of the stuff we see. There really aren't. And some of that stuff is really important. You talk to physicists, they will be like, yeah, there is parts of quantum mechanics that are completely stunning and illogical. You can't explain it with logic. Like, we can't explain stuff. Even very simple stuff like entangled particles. You entangle two particles and you separate them by millions of miles, possibly billions of miles, and they will still be entangled. Why does that happen? That's kind of incredible. Why would you be able to do that? Why would you be able to run and this is my guess from entangled particles, but quantum computing is coming, and one of the things you could probably do with quantum computing is have a quantum computer, and you could have one sitting here in San Diego, you could have another sitting anywhere in the world, and both the screens would show the same thing at the same time without an internet connection. That's entanglement. Now, you could send that off into space beyond the solar system, I'm sure, and the computers would still show the same thing without any time delay, without any time lag. That's quantum entanglement. How do you explain that? What I am suggesting very humbly is that the idea of this all of this just being a dream is probably not true. I can only say probably because I don't know for sure. But it's a beautiful evening. It's been very long. Wow, 1 hour and 4 minutes. All right, have a great evening. Take care.